Eric Burgess here with Music Marketing TV. Today we're going to be looking at how to make this sound with phase plant. Very, very nice sound. It's a laser sound and there's some cool ideas. So let's really quick get an idea of some of the major techniques and then we'll build this thing from scratch. And I actually rebuilt it already once just to make sure I could build something similar again, because there were a lot of just sort of weird small details I came across as I went. So big idea number one, the main wavetable out has no frequency input. So this is all just blank. All this is doing is grabbing interesting wavetable information for us to use. Without this, we get nothing because this drives the output. But if we take the modulators off, we also get essentially nothing. So that's the first big thing. This is being entirely driven by the modulation this is giving it. Idea number two is we're going to give it a little bit of unusual FM stuff and we're going to tune it way down. So this is 3 octaves down, and this oscillator down here, its only purpose is to give it sort of an unusual ratio. As you can see here, this is just sort of a bizarre ratio, 4 semitones up, and it's got, we're using the second harmonic, but like at this weird spot. It's just to give it some weird stuff to work with. That's kind of what gives it the texture. So this is going to be very important. And if you nail just these two principles alone, along with, I guess a third one could be the envelope needs to be, pushing things around. And what I mean by that is, this is what creates the contour of the shape. This is the amplitude envelope, but this is the envelope that sort of shapes the sound. If you nail those, even if you have the effects off, you'll pretty much have the bulk of the sound. You could even lose the unison. So these just sort of pump that up, and the unison makes it thick and wide. So that is a general principle. There's a couple other cool ideas in here. Like for example, we've got a pitch shifter that goes down 4 and up 4 with different grain sizes, and that can produce some cool texture results. But let's go ahead and just dive into making it, because I think that's just a little more straightforward. So we're going to open up phase plant, and to start us off, let's get our wavetable going. So I'm going to come over here, pick a wavetable. I'm going to go into the wavetables. And now you just need anything with a growl. You can actually pick anything. I'm just going to go into growls and vowel. A lot of times if you go into vocals or some other places that have some real nice resonances, those work well too. So there we go. We've got this going. Now our sound's going to be mostly catered by this. I'm going to bring the decay out just a smidge and bring it up just a smidge. There you go. There's our sound. Nothing too crazy. We'll come back and tailor this as needed. Okay, so now what we're going to do is let's add in a little bit of that FM. So I'm going to go to analog and bring this in and just leave it as it is. And in order to drive this, I'm going to turn off all the frequencies information. So right now this has nothing. And I'm going to take the output of this and give it to the phase of this. I'm only going to do very little. And we could see an input appear. And that is being completely driven by this. If we take this away, we get nothing. So there's our first bit of sort of what we're doing here. So this one, pretty straightforward. We're not really going to do a whole lot to this one. We're going to add another one though. And this is where it gets sort of more interesting if we start stacking these. So I'm going to have this one modulate the phase of this one. We get a more interesting tone. But what we're going to do is to make it even more interesting, I'm going to set it to sort of this really bizarre ratio. And you could look for something per note. It's going to change with each note, but this is very, very high and very, very fast. What we're going to do now is we're going to tune the whole thing down so that these sort of really, really high, fast changing things become slower. So I'm going to come over to the semi-sense and we're just going to bring it down by 36. So this is 3 octaves down. Yeah, so pretty dang low. Another thing we're going to do, I did this on the previous one, and so this is more of just a shifting move. We're just going to shift where this happens and try to find a spot that'll work better sort of as a note. Of course, this is all going to be relative to where you're hitting it on the keyboard. I'm hitting, squarely in the middle of the keyboard. So from here, let's add that envelope. This is going to be very, very important. I'm going to bring the attack up and give it this shape that'll go, whoa, that's sort of what's going to be responsible for it. And we don't want the sustain on because this is going to, you know, just when we hold it, we want it to die off. This is really going to be determined by this envelope, but I want this contour to sort of match it. I'm going to extend the decay and bring it down just a smidge. And this is always like a balancing act. We're going to have to figure this out. So from here, let's go ahead. Let's add some modulation to the harmonic. We're already starting to get the beginning of our sound. Again, the texture you get, this is moving around, but you could change the starting point and get different consistent offsets. And another thing I'm going to do is in FM, it's proportional to the amplitude of the wave, like how much FM happens. So I'm going to reduce it just a smidge. So I'm going to bring it down just a bit. That's what we get. So pretty straightforward, all this stuff. Hopefully, we haven't done anything too crazy, just wired up a bit of FM. And now we have a kind of a cool sound coming out. Now, we could experiment with adding offsets and shifts to other things. But I think for our level, what we're doing here, this is pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a modulation to the frame so that we get different sort of FM effects. And you could go all the way and experiment. We could bring it down. And it's very, very soft right now. So I'm going to sit with that. I think that's kind of cool. Ooh, it's going to be nice. And yeah, so from there, we've already got a pretty nice texture. And I'm going to leave it at that for now. Another thing I did on the original one that I'm not doing here is I added a side chain. So if you click the plus icon on the envelope, you can give it a range that it's allowed to mess with. And I added this envelope modulation to the phase modulation here. And so this one just sort of pushes where it happens. And so I could add it. I think I had mine at like 90%. It was something really high. I'm not going to do that in this case. I don't think we need it in this particular way. I already really like the texture. So let's go ahead. Let's add on a distortion. This is really going to pump it up. And then from here, I often like to follow up with a reverb. So let's toss on a reverb. We'll give it a small size and a very small decay with a high damping value. Even less and even less here. And to open the sound up a smidge more, let's add some unison. I like synthetic for this particular thing. And we're going to bring this up to 6. Bring the detune up and the spread bring up as well. Without the spread, it just sounds sort of narrow and sort of, you know, just closed off. But it opens way up because all that phase cancellation stops happening in a mono channel and it sounds way better. Maybe. All right, so we have this. Pretty nice. Now there's a couple other things we could touch here. The first one is if we come in and we add a, what did I want to add? It's something to do with pitch. Pitch, what's it called? Pitch shifter, that's right. So what I like to do is sometimes I'll pitch shift down and then I'll pitch shift up at the end, sort of to undo my pitch shift. But this gives us access to this grain size. So that's a high grain size. So you can see there, it's like a little less, it's like, how do I explain this? One that has a busier texture to me than the other one. And this is kind of useful as just a way to get at that. And I'm going to take advantage of this. It sort of processes it with this lower sort of busier texture. And then at the end, we'll bring it back up and adjust the grain size there. That'll also have an effect on the texture. So again, here's a low grain size. This is what I'm probably going to settle with. That's high. Somewhere right around there. So we'll see how this works out later. Sometimes I wind up just taking these moves off. Now, another thing I did on the original was I had a non-linear filter. And one was a low pass and a high pass. It's not particularly important where you put these in the chain. Because after this, I just had a compressor. But we could just add one here and add another non-linear filter here. And now these non-linear filters, they have different modes. And we're going to go for clipped. Clipped has some really nice stuff here. And this we're going to make this one the low pass and this one the high pass because I want to have this control the brightness. So I guess the order does matter. I want this to control the brightness, and then I want that to get compressed. So right now, let's bring this way down. This is just a, this one's more of just a cleanup filter. Do what you will with it. We could maybe color a bit more with the drive, but this one's going to move with our envelope here. So let's bring the decay up a bit, actually, now that I look at this. And let's go ahead and add this to the cutoff. And we want this to go, we want this to go that way. And here we might adjust the attack a smidge. Add a hold. For this, let's use a pitch shift. I might just not need that move. Let's go to the distortion. Let's pump this up some. Okay, let's add the compressor here. So that's just a little bit of eyeballing. This is stuff you would take more time to settle your moves on. So for this, let's just look at where we're hitting. Bring the threshold down some. We can see how much it's going to compress there. Bring the ratio up, the release down, then the makeup up. That's fine, just compressing it a bit. You might replace this step with an OTT, or you could open up multipass inside of here and actually choose one of the multiband presets. They have one called not OTT, which does similar things to OTT. And from here, now we might change the resonance value on the Q for this filter move. Give it a little bit of that cut. And now let's add another pitch shift. Now this pitch shift is going to go up 4, and we'll add our one that goes down 4 back in. And let's edit the grain values here. Let's experiment a bit. I'm not totally sold on the grain value pick there. So I might try that. Let's try a low one here. See, that's pretty choppy. All right, go with this. So this is something, might come back, might change, depends on the track. And here I might follow this particular one up with another compressor or another distortion to really fill it in. But we've got ourselves our, there it is. That's our sound. And so at this point, we could try messing with the ratios a bit more, changing where these hit. Bring these up a bit. And maybe we'll bring the attack back a bit. And the decay down a bit. Bring the sustain down and the decay way out. And bring this up. Bring this. This is another one where you'll spend some time trying to get this just right. We'll bring the hold up maybe so that the decay doesn't have to work so hard. We held the shape down a bit. At this point, we could try out some different wavetables. And you can see it's kind of interesting how the wavetable doesn't play a huge role. It's got the role matters less because of the crazy amount of FM, but you can get some nice results this way. If we pick something that has less going on, for example, some of these, not evolving, I want the morphs, squares. They have a few that go from one to another. Yeah, morphs. You can hear how the different fundamental wave shapes would affect something like this. So that could be another interesting one to explore. And that's the general gist of it. Now, I know this sounds quite a bit different than our original. This one sounds like it's got a little bit more washed out of a sound. I did go for a much smaller grain size and a bigger grain size here. And these are the shapes that I settled on. I kept the attack high on this one. Now, when we're looking at this one, I've got 11 and 26%. And these things I think are going to be a bit important to match. So let's go ahead. Let's go for 26 and 11 as well here. And let's go ahead and take a peek. And now I'm doing a little bit of comparing. Let's see why they sound as different as they do. These things can often be like super, super touchy. So it's kind of nice to really quick just do a quick comparison. So we got 11, 26. Over here we've got a minus 20. I'm at 19. That's fine. 2.346. We could try a little bit higher then. Just as where we ended for the one that we made. So you got a bit different of a vibe. This one has more of a squelchy vibe, the original. There's a variety of reasons of why this could be, but you could go ahead and just, if you want a quick peek at the values, this is where things are generally set when it comes to the effects. And for the modulation, this is sitting at 11%, 26%, and then these guys are also being modulated by this guy down here. Other than that, things are pretty much identical. So it's really just a matter at this point of, if I wanted to get to that one, just finessing this. And there is one subtlety here. If we bring this down or up, this is going to affect this. You see how this like extra wave appeared here? This extra cycle. That's going to play a significant role. If we bring this up. So if we go just to before that, we get that texture just after that. So, and it's centered around by how much this is allowed to have an influence, which comes from how this is set, which is related to, you know, these things down here. And so just nailing those and getting those perfect can be really hard to replicate sometimes. But anyways, that is the process I went through in making this patch. I'm really, really happy actually with both of them. They have very different vibes to them, but they're both lasers. They both have nice little lasery textures, useful in all kinds of tracks. If you have any questions about this, feel free to let me know. Subscribe and hit that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.